So I wanted to bring you in today and ask you the question, what is a ladybird deed? Just a quick note before we get started, today's video is an informal conversation for just informational purposes. It's not legal advice. If you have a question on your specific case, make sure to consult an attorney. Thanks. Hi guys, welcome to the episode. My name is Dan Quattrocchi. I'm sitting here with Jimmy Buchanan. He's a local estate planning attorney. Jimmy, thank you for joining us today. What prompted this episode was a phone call received last month from a woman who wanted to sell her father's unit. The father had just passed away. And I always go to the tax rolls to see who's the owner on the property at first to make sure there's no probate issues that could cause major delays. I can't sell the property, ties it up, costs, everything like that. Well, when I went to the property, I saw that it was just in her father's name still. So I reached out to my title company and they did some research and got back to me and said, hey, you're fine. It actually was transferred by a ladybird deed. So I had heard that term before, obviously, but I really thought trusts were kind of the way to go with transferring of properties, and I wasn't too sure about it. So I wanted to bring you in today and ask you the question, what is a ladybird deed and how are they used? And
Sure thing.
share on that?
Thank you for having me, Dan. A ladybird deed is just another name for something called an enhanced life estate deed.
Okay.
To explain it though, let me back up just a little bit. Traditionally, if somebody wanted to transfer their property and they wanted to avoid probate and they didn't want to use a trust, they would do something called a life estate deed, not an enhanced life estate deed. And what that did is it gave them the right to ownership and possession of their property and then transfer the property on their death to their beneficiaries, typically their children.
So what triggered them doing this enhanced life estate deed or ladybird deed that we're talking about?
Well, let me give you an example. Traditionally, if I wanted to transfer my property, I would put into this life estate deed. And that would give me possession, control, ownership of it during my lifetime, and obviously pass it along to my beneficiaries after I passed.
Okay.
However, if I wanted to do something with that property, mortgage it, transfer it, sell it, or otherwise dispose of it during my lifetime, now I have to get the permission of my kids or the other beneficiaries. They have to sign off on it in order to transfer that deed or mortgage the property.
Which can cause issues.
Right. And so in the 1980s, they came up with something called the enhanced life estate deed. It still did all the same things as the life estate deed, but it retained the power for you as the owner to transfer it without getting the permission and the signatures of the beneficiaries in order to do one of those transfers or mortgages.
Okay.
And that ended up becoming termed the ladybird deed.
Why on earth did they call it ladybird? What's that name from? Is that a Florida thing or?
Well, it does come from Florida, at least legend has it came from Florida, either a professor or an attorney. They were creating an example of using this enhanced life estate deed. And in that example, the fictitious characters were Lyndon Johnson and Ladybird.
Okay.
And the name just stuck.
Okay. So let's get practical here. How does someone wants to go ahead and get one done? What does that look like? What's the process? What's the cost, time frame?
Very simple, very quick.
Okay.
Just sit down, meet with a local estate planning attorney, explain the details of your situation to make sure the ladybird deed fits your situation. The attorney's going to fill out the paperwork, record the deed with the county. And then as far as cost goes, it's certainly under $500 to do, and it's much simpler, much less complex, and much more cost effective than a traditional estate plan or a trust.
Or a trust. Okay. So way less than a trust would cost.
Right.
Also way less than probate.
Oh, absolutely.
To do that. Okay. So we talked a lot about ladybird deed. Can you just touch on some of the other tools? We talked about trusts. What are some other things to transfer property?
Yeah, sure thing. The ladybird deed, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. There's other circumstances that come into play. You mentioned a trust. A trust has its own unique benefits, things like managing multiple properties, naming successor beneficiaries. In particular, if you're dealing with things like guardianship or children with special needs, those are all important factors that play.
Okay. Jimmy, thank you so much for your time today. If you're watching this and you're thinking about doing estate planning for yourselves, avoidance of probate or transferring your property, you need to sit down with an estate planning attorney and get that done sooner than later. So thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.